So if you go to the Fair Work website, they have something that looks like a chatbot, but I'm going to show you that calling it a chatbot is being pretty generous, I would say. So let's try just something like, what is the, okay, so if we go, I'll just switch screen. So you trigger it by clicking on that little button down the bottom there. And if we have a look at the actual chatbot, okay, so it has these kind of pre-made questions and stuff. But anyway, what's the award for this role? I'm just going to paste in this job from. It doesn't like the question, too big. Okay, what's the award for a foreman at a concrete plant? Okay, so it just says a kind of standard disclaimer about go and look up which award. Okay, what is the minimum wage for a graphic designer? Okay, so it sort of gives you an answer, but it's saying like the retail and building construction awards, and that's not really, I don't know, that doesn't really match up with what I was thinking you would want. Let's just try it again. Okay, so what is the award wage for a second year apprentice carpenter? Okay, so we just get that standard disclaimer. I mean, it's better than nothing, but let's not kid ourselves. Not many people are going to use that, probably because of just how useless it is. So can something better be done? Well, I think so. And this is where context is really, really important. And so what I want to show you. Okay, so what I've created is a chatbot that uses the context of websites like Fair Work and WorkSafe Australia and similar kind of websites that are trusted and have good information on them. And so what we can do is we can grab the grab the job description. So I'll just come and pick this job description up from a Seek role for a graphic designer. Okay, so I'm just going to grab this role and we can paste it into the context so we don't fill up the chat. So you can see it's just talking about it's a graphic designer in Newcastle, etc. So we'll save that. So that now has become part of the context for the chatbot. So what award covers this role? And so it knows that the role we're talking about is what we just pasted into that context block because that's being inserted as part of the chat. So you don't see it, but it's going in there at the same time. Okay, so it said, this is part of the Graphic Design and Printing Award. So this is the short answer. And what's happening in the background now is there's a subsequent workflow step that is going to give us a more comprehensive answer. So you can see it's just subtle here, but it says loading details. And so what's happening is it's writing a more comprehensive answer to the question, because in a chatbot, you don't want a massive answer all the time. That's unhelpful. But what you do want is a way of getting to a more detailed answer if that's possible. And sometimes it will do a separate long description. So on the right here, we've got what I've called the research notes. And just for some fun, we've added in a box that generates a picture that goes with it. And so this is like a summary of the details, and you can copy that information and that becomes a markdown format. And we've got some follow-up questions. So we can say, what are the key entitlements typically covered under this award? Okay, so now it goes off and it's checking as it goes. So what's happening is, see how this one here, it's got all these different websites, right? So it's used Google Gemini's context, the search grounding and URL, to go and look at the websites that are relevant to these this topic and information. And so you can see here, it said these are the conditions. So it's got the graphics art and printing award, which I would say that's probably correct for this particular role. And it's going to do the longer answer. So if we have a look at the details, and so you can see it's a more comprehensive answer. Because what I don't want is to shove like 3 screens full of information into the chat all the time, right? You want enough information to answer the question, but not an essay every time. But we can copy this out if we want to as well. And you can see on the right here, it's stacked up that extra research note. So now we've got a note about that. And this is a summary. And the questions happen right at the end. So after all the information has been presented, then it works out the follow-up questions. And so these are contextual to what's happened so far in the conversation. They're not just random. They are based on what has been said and explained before. So let's just take a different so you can see how that's quite detailed and actually pretty interesting. So let's see if we can ask a kind of more specific question. So if I work in this job from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Monday to Thursday, what will my wage be, and what would the minimum I can spell, can't I? Award wage be. Okay, so this is getting more complicated because this would require calculation. So we can't really just take this amount of information. This isn't available on the web. Like there is no page on the internet that's going to say, here is this job and how much it is going to pay you, and this is how much the minimum award is. Not this specifically, right? So there's not like I haven't made a document that has that information in it. That's not how this works. All of this is being worked out on the fly with the Google Gemini model. So it's researching the answer, right? So over here you can see it's had a look at the information. It's looked up the actual award, and it's trying to decide like what level it is, which is actually pretty tricky. A lot of people spend a lot of time trying to work out what the award would be for a certain role. So this is a complex reasoning problem, and you can see we've got some examples here. And so because of the ambiguity, essentially, it's not made a hard choice, and that's okay because there's plenty of situations where a role doesn't actually have a specific level because actually the level could be determined by the person who's doing the work. So that's you can see how the wage calculation is a different agent and a different output to the summary as well, right? So it's a totally different workflow that does that calculation. It's not part of the same summary workflow. And hence like the formatting is different and things like that. So we'll just refresh it. And now let's look at a safety kind of question. So what are the safety requirements for a forklift driver in a warehouse in Sydney? Okay, so again, a pretty specific question. There would be things about this on the internet, but there might not be a page which actually says this particular thing. And you've really got to be like careful about what you're using as the grounding, right? We want websites that are deemed to be factual and not just some rubbish that's been written out by ChatGPT. We want things that have some basis in the actual legislation and workplace regulations. So it's given us the short answer. Great, because we want to keep people happy that things are kind of giving people something to read nice and quickly, right? So that's great. Now we've got our detailed research notes here on the right, and you can see cool little like image. The images generated by Google Imagen are, I think, very, very good. Like, we are well past the 7 fingers, 4 hands kind of situation. And so you can see we've got a pretty good summary here of what's going on. And if we look at the details, you can see this is the explanation, and it's quite detailed, and you wouldn't really want that all in the chat, right? So it's very useful, and this is factual information, like it's pretty detailed, and you can see the sources that it's consulted. So this is why it takes a little bit of time for it to provide the answer, because it's going and looking at all of these websites. It's consulting with all these websites to get its answers, right? And including Safe Work Australia and all that sort of stuff. And what's interesting here is you can see that a website that's publishing information potentially ends up in this kind of a search. And so this is where like having a good blog post on your website actually can be pretty useful, because you can get found in these kind of searches, and that's if that's what you want, probably. So okay, so and then we can ask a follow-up question. What are the most common causes of forklift accidents in warehouses? Interesting question. Let's see what the answer is. Again, I have not told this AI anything about forklifts ever. It doesn't have any idea about this topic until it starts to go and research it. And so it's given the short answer. Great. We've got a good kind of summary answer, which will be enough for me to read to, I'm getting a nice, readable, bite-size answer to my question. Right? I'm not being expected to read an essay. And now the longer answer is being created in the background, which will have hopefully a fair bit more detail and some more specifics, and also the grounding URLs. Okay, so if we go over here, click on View Details, amazing. So you can see we've got actually some statistics here, some real nice detailed list. This can be grabbed as Markdown and used. And these are the websites that it's used in its grounding, right? So let's have a look here. We'll just might open a couple of these just to see. So this one's WorkSafe Victoria, WorkSafe Queensland, and Safe Work Australia. And we'll have a quick look and see what it's looked up. So great. So it's found a report on forklift safety 2023. There's a article here on WorkSafe Victoria about 140 accidents in forklifts last year. This one's one on WorkSafe Queensland. And this looks like a PDF about, safe forklift operation. So it's quite, specific. It's being detailed, which is, that's what you want. So, and again, like we've got, a graphic, and you can see it's different but similar. Because it's a similar topic. We didn't diverge much from the original content. So yeah, that's that. Now the other thing is like this can be really used in any of the kind of workplace domains. So or anything that's kind of in that realm, it should answer to a reasonable extent on. So yeah, just thought I'd show you, this is all made possible because of the search grounding that is part of the tool set of Google Gemini. And so like when you tell it to do this work, you can get it to use that, and it means it considers things that it can find on the internet, and you can tell it even, you can be very strict. Like I could have told it only to use like the WorkSafe website or something like that. But obviously if you're too constrained, you might have trouble getting a good answer out of it. But, if you were doing this for a business, you could tell it to just use that business's website and maybe a few other key websites or something like that. But I hope you can see like the difference between this and the generic chatbot that's on Fair Work, and how like basically rubbish that one is. It's not even, it's basically just a glorified point and click answer bot. It doesn't do very much, right? So whereas this is actually doing research for you. So yeah.